I welcome to the Sociological Lens. I'm Dr. Dilsora Fozilova. This week, we are going to talk about governmentality in class, in my criminology class. So I took a little bit time the weekend to create this video in case if my students needs a little bit more help to understand governmentality, so they can go back and watch this video. I'm personally very fond of Foucault's writing. I read him like a poetry. I guess it's a personal preference. So I found his picture and here just kind of symbolically put myself into conversation with Foucault. So let's get into the Foucault's concept of governmentality. So governmentality, a term developed by Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, political theorist, and sociologist, refers to the way governments organize and manage populations through a combination of strategies, techniques, and forms of knowledge. So Foucault introduced this topic or this concept in a series of lectures in the Collège de France in the late 1970s, particularly in security, territory, population between 1977 and 78, and the birth of biopolitics, that was 1978-79. It describes how power operates not solely through laws or force, but through the management of people, institutions, and practices to produce desired outcomes in society. So how do we define governmentality? Governmentality combines the words government and rationality or mentality, emphasizing how government is rationalized form of power. It focuses on how power is exercised to organize and regulate populations, that's techniques of governance, and the relationship between knowledge like statistics, science, economics, and power in shaping policies and governance. That's what his knowledge and power is. And another one is how individuals internalize norms and practices, becoming self-governing subjects aligned with the societal expectations. That this brings all this idea of social norms and power surveillance and also governmentality. That is subject formation. So there are some of the main concepts governmentality I'll be discussing. Foucault argued that modern governance shifts its focus from controlling the territory or the sovereignty of rulers to managing populations. This includes like healthcare system, welfare, education, and security. Governments began relying on techniques like statistics, consensus, and public health programs to regulate and optimize population behavior. He calls it population management. Also, he talks about the pastoral power, which is derived from religious practices. Pastoral power refers to the idea that governments act like shepherds, guiding their flock, ensuring the well-being of individuals while maintaining control over people. So in the politics of, he calls it biopower or the politics of biopolitics, governmentality is closely linked to biopower, the regulation of life itself. This includes managing birth rates, mortality, diseases, and the conditions necessary for societal productivity. And in neoliberal governmentality, for example, the birth of biopolitics, Foucault examined how governance shifted under neoliberalism. He explores how individuals are encouraged to become entrepreneurial or self-regulating agents in a market-driven society. So we wonder why Foucault was entrusted with this topic and why did he write this or develop this concept. Foucault developed governmentality to critique traditional theories of power and provide a framework for understanding how power operates in modern societies. His motivations were like critique of sovereign power, for example. Traditional understandings of power focus on rulers exerting authority through law or force. Foucault argued that modern power is more dispersed and operates through subtler mechanisms, shaping individual behavior and societal norms. We will get into some examples in a bit. So also he wanted to understand modern states. Foucault wanted to explain the emergence of the modern state and its shift from direct rule to governing through policies, institutions, and knowledge systems. He talks about the role of knowledge power in power. He explores how scientific and administrative knowledge, for example, economics, medicine, criminology, underpins modern governance, creating systems of control that are less overt but overly ingrained. Foucault was interested in how individuals are shaped by and contribute to power structures. Governmentality explains how people internalize norms and discipline themselves, reducing the need for coercion or somebody pressuring them to do certain things. So power is not just repressive for Foucault, it is productive, creating norms, behaviors, and institutions. Foucault analyzed the neoliberal governmentality. I'll be giving some examples later, and particularly relevant today, shedding light on how individuals are shaped to prioritize market logic and self-regulation. So Foucault's governmentality remains as a fundamental concept for understanding modern governance, the interplay of power and knowledge, and the ways in which societies regulate themselves. One of the main concepts of governmentality is the power beyond the state. So Foucault's work expanded the understanding of power by shifting the focus beyond traditional state-centric frameworks. In his view, power is not solely concentrated in state institutions such as governments or police or courts. Instead, it is dispersed and relational and exercised through various networks, institutions, and practices that shape human behavior, knowledge, and social norms. So, according to Foucault, power in our society is everywhere. Foucault argued that power is not something that individuals or institutions possess, but something that operates through relationships. It is embedded in all social interactions and exists wherever there are human relations. The relationship between husband and wife, the relationship between mother and child or father and child, the relationship between friends, relationship between government organizations, relationship between your instructor and you. The power is everywhere. Traditional views often see power as a top-down process exercised by the state or a sovereign authority. Foucault emphasized that power also operates horizontally, influencing everyday practices in institutions like families, schools, workplaces, and media. So power extends beyond state mechanisms to various social institutions like, the education system, schools, for example, or healthcare system in hospitals, or prisons, which discipline individuals by shaping their behavior and thoughts. The normalization for Foucault is that power works by establishing norms of acceptable behavior. These norms are reinforced through surveillance, education, and social expectations, encouraging individuals to self regulate. For example, punctuality, like be in class on time. Our class starts 9:30 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning. I expect all of you to be in class. So it should be accepted as the norm, and punctuality is expected from you. So before I enter the class, I want my students come and sit in the auditorium. If you do that, so you're regulating your time, getting up early enough, taking whatever you need, again, taking your books or computer to take notes, or your pen, pencil, all of them are part of discipline or punctuality. If you have all of them prepared in class, so you are meeting the expectations of your education system. So he talks about biopower, which I'll be explaining a little bit further this. But for him, power beyond the state includes biopower, which focuses on the regulation of life itself. It operates through healthcare initiatives or economic policies and social programs to manage birth rates, mortality, productivity, and other things in society. So Foucault's concept of governmentality shows how power operates through policies and techniques that guide the behavior of populations, often without direct coercion. So he also, this is power and knowledge and power, and the biopower, all of them are actually part of this power beyond the state. So then he talks about resistance and counterpower. That is, since power is relational, it always generates resistance. Individuals and groups can challenge power through activism, alternative discourses, or subversion of norms. Decentralized resistance is not limited, that resistance is not limited to opposing the state. It occurs in workplaces, communities, in other spaces where power is exercises. So examples of power beyond the state can be media and culture. Media outlets shape public opinion, establish norms, and influence political behavior without direct state involvement. Also, there is corporate influence. Transnational corporations wield significant power shaping economic policies, labor practices, and environmental standards beyond the control of nation states. Education can be, or religion can be a control, or globalization. International organizations like United Nations, IMF, and global networks operate independently of states, shaping policies and norms on transnational level. So understanding society requires, I believe, understanding this decentralized power, and with the with the focus on everyday life. And also it is important to understand the intersectionality of power. So Foucault's analysis of power beyond the state offers a broad, more nuanced perspective on how society is governed and structured, highlighting the pervasive and multifaceted nature of power in modern life. And his second big concept is biopolitics, biopower. He talks about biopolitics is a concept developed in his, the talking about this governmentality. He tried to describe how power operates in modern societies by focusing on the management of regulation of human life. It is a form of power that governs populations by regulating their biological and social processes, such as health, reproduction, mortality, productivity, and other stuff. So he also introduced this topic, sorry for my throat, introduced this topic in his lectures at the College de France. That was also 77, 78, 1977 and 78. So key features of biopolitics is, unlike earlier forms of sovereign power, which focused on the right to take life through execution or welfare, biopolitics emphasizes the fostering and regulating of life, is concerned with managing population's health, fertility, and other stuff. He talks about regulation through institutions. For example, biopolitics operates through institutions like public healthcare systems, education systems, urban planning, and welfare policies. These institutions work to ensure that the security and productivity of the population is in place. Also, biopolitics establishes norms and standards of behavior, health, and productivity. And he talks about body politics and duality, the efforts to discipline and optimize individual bodies, such as through fitness programs or medical interventions. He was really into psychiatry, like how certain forms of psychiatry takes power over individuals, that people become so powerless beside this kind of practices. He also talks about statistical knowledge. Governments use statistics and data to monitor populations. For example, census data and public health records are used to shape policies and predict trends. Vaccination campaigns, disease prevention, and sanitation programs are examples of how biopolitics operates to maximize collective health. He talks about economic policies, economic governance, as healthy, educated, and productive citizens are seen as essential for economic growth. Some of the examples of biopolitics in practice today would be vaccination programs or anti-smoking campaigns aimed to regulate behavior and improve the health of the population. Population policies also a very good example to explain it, that policies promoting or discouraging childbirth in certain regions reflect biopolitical strategies. For example, China's one-child policy or pro-nationalist policies in declining birth rate regions. So the next one here, there's some critics I wanted to mention about the biopolitics. Some people, some scholars argue that Foucault's concept underestimates the enduring importance of sovereign power and state violence, and there's some truth to that. Others critique biopolitics for not sufficiently addressing intersections of race, gender, and colonialism. The next concept he talks is the self-regulation. So self-regulation refers to the process by which individuals monitor, control, and adjust their behavior, thoughts, and emotions to meet personal goals, societal norms, and expectations. In the context of power and society, self-regulation is a mechanism through which individuals internalize external norms and discipline themselves without the need for direct coercion or force by external authorities like government institutions. Some of the key parts of self-regulation is this internalization of norms, surveillance, and self-surveillance, personal responsibility, and habit formations. They're all the key features of this concept. The first is internalization of norms. So individuals adopt societal rules and standards as their own, guiding their behavior to align with what is considered acceptable or desirable. For example, people adhering to punctuality, like I mentioned in the beginning, in workplace or school or university, or maintaining fitness based on societal ideals of health. Also, surveillance and self-surveillance is kind of like a very close close concept to that. Self-regulation often arises from the awareness of being observed, for example, real or imagined. A concept Foucault referred as the panopticon effect. You know panopticon probably, that he talks about Bentham's tower, that the incarcerated people feel like they were being watched. And now we take that concept to apply in self-regulation. So you feel that you're always being watched, right? That's what he talks about, the panopticon effect. Over time, individuals internalize these observations and begin to monitor themselves. For example, social media, the social media users curating their profiles to align with societal expectations of how you need to come across, like, for example, expectations of beauty or expectations of success, right? Personal responsibility, he talks about self-regulation shifts the burden of discipline and control from institutions to individuals, making them responsible for their own compliance and well-being. For example, neoliberal ideologies emphasizing personal responsibility for health, wealth, and sometimes career success, or, for example, educational success. So you, as a student, given the responsibility to manage your own success. What does it mean? So the university tells you what should you do to be successful at the university, but they're not always monitoring you. So you're not telling you exactly, not guiding you every way, but in a way you're guiding yourself. You're choosing your courses, and then you are taking a look at the structure of your course, learning about the evaluations, and you think about what can you do to become successful in this class. So you are disciplining yourself to do well, and that's on your hands. If you can't do it, nobody can do it for you. So you have to regulate yourself and manage it. So habit formation. So he talks about through repetition and reinforcement, behaviors become ingrained, requiring less conscious effort over time. So, continuing that example, if you're as a student learn to register yourself in a certain course, go through your course outline, study well your evaluations, and do everything what you need to do. And if that becomes a habit, every time you're successful in your courses, and most of the time you're successful in your courses. That's what he talks about when he says surveillance and self-surveillance, personal responsibility, and habit formation. All these features of the self-regulation is just comes together to regulate individuals by themselves. Foucault emphasizes self-regulation as a central mechanism in modern governance, particularly through his concepts of disciplinary power and biopower. He argued that modern institutions like schools, prisons, and workplaces train individuals to regulate themselves by rewarding conformity and punishing deviance. Students, for example, learning to raise their hands before speaking, or workers clocking in on time. Those are the very good examples of disciplinary power. And self-regulation extended to managing one's own life, including healthcare, health, productivity, and other things, and that benefits society and aligns with the governmental priorities. Individuals, for example, adopting fitness regimen or diets, not just for personal health, but to align with societal ideals. So there are, he talks about the benefits of self-regulation that increases autonomy, efficient governance, personal development, but there is also some critique towards self-regulation. For example, overemphasizes, some argue that it overemphasizes on self-regulation, can ignore systemic barriers and structural inequalities, placing undue responsibility on individuals for outcomes beyond their control. And also, like, another one would be that surveillance gives some anxiety to society. The constant pressure to self-regulate can lead to stress, anxiety, burnout, especially when societal expectations are unrealistic. So we, in daily lives, we kind of think about how you can be successful, and we do so much to keep going for a long time. And as a scholar and academic, I know that we put ourselves into a lot of work, and that our jobs, our career requires that. And I feel there are so many people feel burnout in their daily lives. So the next one is knowledge and power. This is a big one, actually. I think this one is well used concept. Foucault argued that knowledge and power are deeply interconnected. They cannot be understood as separate entities. Instead, power shapes the production of knowledge, and knowledge reinforces and legitimizes power. This relationship operates through what he called power knowledge, which highlights the co-constructive nature of these two concepts. So the knowledge is not neutral or purely objective. It is shaped by power dynamics within society. Those who hold power determine what is considered valid knowledge and how it is disseminated. For example, in the 19th century, medical discourses about madness shaped societal understanding of mental illness. And he has an amazing book called Madness and Civilization. If you read that, that's great. If you didn't, maybe you need to get a copy and read that. Often marginalizing individuals labeled as insane. So power relies on knowledge to legitimize its practices. Scientific knowledge, for example, is often used to justify political decisions, social policies, and institutional practices. Sometimes it's just interesting for me to observe that same statistics often used in two different ways, like opposing ways by presidential nominees or politicians. That in Trump campaign recently, he was using the same statistics in twisting it in a way that it had a different kind of effect or influence over people. And the other party was using the same information to explain in different way. So this is a great example of how knowledge is used or knowledge is used to justify political decisions or political priorities. So Foucault emphasizes the role of discourse, which refers to the systems of knowledge, language, and practices that define what is true or normal in a given society. Discourses, for example, on race in colonial times framed European dominance as civilizing, legitimizing practices like slavery and imperialism. This is another example that's similar to what I already provided, that this racism or race used in a way that benefited certain groups, right? So he talks about institutions like schools, hospitals, prisons, or religious organizations, or key sites where power and knowledge intersect. They create, reinforce, and circulate norms about what's acceptable and what is deviant. Schools teach specific histories and values, shaping how individuals view the world and reinforcing dominant ideologies. So in the knowledge and power, you can see his concepts or his key features of governmentality overlap. This knowledge and power also talks about surveillance and control. And again, you can go back to panopticon metaphor, normalization in society. Power operates by defining what is normal and encouraging conformity to the standards. Deviations from norms are labeled as abnormal or deviant, creating mechanisms of exclusion and control. And also biopower is part of it. So there are some critique towards power knowledge as well. We always mention them to think critically. So there is overemphasis on power. Some critics argue that Foucault focuses too much on the oppressive aspects of power and neglects its potential for emancipation or collective good. And they talk about lack of agency. They say that Foucault's theory is often seen as overly deterministic, leaving very small room for individual agency in shaping knowledge and resisting power. So those are some of the critics of power knowledge. We use power knowledge, widely in our society today. media and information control is about power and knowledge. Big data and surveillance, climate change discourse, healthcare, and biopolitics, all of them use this knowledge and power to carry their duties. Foucault's analysis of knowledge and power provides a critical lens for understanding how societies function, how individuals are governed, and how norms and truths are constructed, maintained, and changed in our society. So I would like to provide some examples, a little bit more than what I was saying while explaining the concepts. In neoliberalism, for example, individuals are encouraged to see themselves as entrepreneurs of their lives. Like, we are the ones who are responsible for our success and failure. This shifts the burden of societal problems. For example, if you're unemployment, that means you need to work on your resume. You need to maybe get a training. You need to step up in your game. You need to work on your how you present yourself. So that is becoming your own problem. It's not a problem of the structures anymore, right? Workers are held to upskill themselves to stay in competition, emphasizing personal responsibility, which I already mentioned. I sometimes get ahead of myself. And surveillance as well. I also have lectures on Shoshana Zuboff's surveillance capitalism. That's a perfect example of governmentality. So modern technology is, the internet and all the social media and CCTVs and all this, what it called GPS and other things, enable constant monitoring, making individuals aware they are being watched and prompting themselves to self-regulate. So we constantly feel somebody is watching us if there's nobody else. So if we are believers, that we think that God's watching us. So by doing that, we are under surveillance, or we are surveilling ourselves. That is another examples of governmentality. The last one is health governance. Public health policies encourage individuals to make responsible choices. It can be about your fitness, it can be about your nutrition, it can be about your mental health, it can be about your lives, like having children, not having children, birth controls, and going for scans for example, women go for breast cancer screening and all of those steps. So that's your duty to make sure that you are taking care of all of those, to be healthy, to be to make sure you are aware of what's going on in your body. That is also example of governmentality and self-regulation, and that's biopower, and all of those comes into this examples. So this is all, I believe. Oh, there's some more. Okay. Significance of governmentality. Foucault's concept of governmentality highlights how power operates subtly and pervasively in everyday life. So just to say on my own words, that Foucault takes the power away from central forces, from the sovereignty, from the government, from the authorities, and just like when you are throwing a bunch of food to birds and it just scattered all over the floor and the birds tried to pick them, he does that. So he takes all this power from them, gives them a little bit, and then rest of it just he spreads on society, and he says, like, there you go, just pick your powers and explain how the things are done in society, or understand how the things are done in society. He talks about what the road, what you call them, I forgot, that bumpers you have, that when you're going with a car, if you don't slow down, your car would be like dropped in some places, costing you $50 or more. So that's the way it controls you. Or there is the assumption that police can be on your way, so even you're very super rush to get somewhere, you try not to pass your speeding limit so you don't get that $350 fine, or in bad cases you can lose your license. All of those stuff put in your brain. He's not talking about there's a police and controlling you. He's talking about that idea is inserted in your mind, and you control yourself so you don't get that punishment, right? So this all about governmentality. I hope you liked it. I hope this gives you a little bit idea about it. And best way of learning more is grabbing a copy of Foucault's book and reading it. I hope you do that. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.